Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. What's up, DB?
Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
How we doing?
We're doing all right.
Laughing at Shane. Laughing at you.
You know?
Everybody's laughing.
It is what it is.
Everybody's everybody. You know.
I don't even know what that means. Everybody's everybody?
Yeah.
That sounds like nonsense.
Everybody just doing everybody.
Apparently.
Isn't that right, Shane? Oh, just waiting on Ravi to understand the bed music. Shane just shrugs. And Ravi's
I'm just doing like the old man walk.
I know it. Ravi shot his shot early.
Well, I mean, listen, I just
Premature with our greetings and salutations.
When the intro's over, I think it's time for me to talk.
Yeah, you just want him to open you up, huh?
Yeah,
Shane,
nice.
open him up, man. Like right away.
Nah.
Like right away.
You know, we had a good run there for a while.
It was good.
We had a good stretch where we didn't have any issues, but here we are.
You did. You're probably like what? 8 out of the last 9, maybe 8 out of the last 8.
I think so. It's almost a couple weeks, I think.
Yeah. Got that average up.
It's all right. It is what it is. We'll try and learn, watch the tape.
It is what it is.
Get back out there and see what we can do.
Ooh, his wet hair must have gotten away.
Who was that?
That is your boy.
That's not
that ain't wet.
That's not my boy.
I'm not a Phillies guy.
I don't like the haircut. I need to be.
Dude, I don't know how he keeps it like with all the berries and juices.
Yeah, I need to be a little cleaner than that.
He reminds me of the folks in Coming to America. You know, where they would like get up off your couch and he would leave a mark. I don't know why he does that and how you haven't seen.
It's been a long time.
Too many minorities.
No, I'm not an Eddie Murphy guy.
Old Eddie Murphy is hilarious.
His sense of humor never really hit me right. Yeah.
Too foul?
No, I don't mind like crass humor or however you want to put it. Like I don't care about that at all. I just didn't strike me, just didn't hit me right.
Yeah, I don't know how Marsh does that with his hair. I mean, to each his own.
I don't know how anybody...
Does he go back maybe in the bathroom in the clubhouse and like water it down or gel it down or slick it down?
I don't know. It seems just really distracting. I mean, like I've got a big beard too, but that dude's doing a lot. You know, like there's a lot happening there.
And the
it's got to be hot too.
Oh, they got back to playing softball yesterday, so maybe they snapped out of it.
Maybe I don't know.
Mariners they're just annoying enough.
They are just annoying enough. You know, maybe they'll start hitting a little bit. They made some trades at the deadline,
holding off the Astros. Kinda.
They're doing their best. They're giving it a go.
They did their best.
It's probably gonna.
But they guess their best wasn't good enough.
I don't know what's happening.
It's an old song.
Yeah,
one of the old crooners. It's called Just Once.
Which crooner is that?
I get them all confused. Maybe James Ingram or Al Jarreau. One of the two. Google it. Just Once.
All right. Just Once.
Just Once. I think it's either Al Jarreau or James Ingram. Give it to me.
Just James Ingram.
Okay.
Just Once. There you go.
I almost said Jeffrey Osborne. He was in that. You know, it's kind of like
Shane. Where are you at? Isn't that supposed to be your wheelhouse? The music?
No.
Come on.
Maybe.
Come on, man.
Shane might have been conceived of that song. Nah, I don't know if your parents probably got down with R&B. I don't know.
I'll leave it to you to find out.
No, not going there.
It's not research you want to do.
Nope.
Sometimes it's better not to know.
Old SES over there. That's my man.
Sometimes better not to know. We had a bit.
I don't know.
It all started with Brandon Marsh.
Yeah, this is your fault.
Typically.
No, it seems like it would be distracting having that much hair going on when you're trying to play professional baseball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like the Phillies as the favorite? Because everybody else does. Although I still think the Dodgers are the betting fave. I think after the trade deadline.
Even
though it's not like.
Do I like them as in do I trust them or do I think there's a better option? Do we have
to overthink everything?
Yeah.
Are they your favorite in the NL? That's pretty simple.
Okay, yeah, that's the clarification I was looking for.
Oh Lord.
In the NL? Yes.
Kind of like the original question.
Well, no, you didn't say that. You said, do I like them as the favorite? That's a different question. are they my favorite or do I like them as like, yes, they are my favorite. Do I love it? Not exactly. Like, I don't feel great about it, but here we are.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great question.
Thank you.
Sometimes I feel like the more I let you talk, the more things reveal themselves.
Well, like I overthink things.
yeah.
That's not new to anybody.
Who would you make the Dodgers the favorite?
No, I said
Because
Phillies.
you talk about a team you don't trust.
I said Phillies, but I don't love it.
I definitely don't trust LA.
They're two different questions. Who is my favorite, and
We've moved on from your thought process.
Los Angeles Dodgers, I don't trust them to get healthy, so I'm sticking with the Phillies for now.
Yeah.
If the Dodgers get healthy and you get some of those pitchers back, you get Mookie Betts back, then I feel like the Dodgers are the favorite. But that's a hypothetical at this point.
Who do you like in the AL?
No one.
It's supposed to be, well,
I guess the Orioles.
by default.
Yeah, because I don't trust Cleveland.
Well, them and the Yankees just exchanging
Yeah, going
first
back and
place.
forth.
Yeah.
And I'm never gonna say the Yankees. They would have to be so much better than everybody else.
That's the Red Soxian in you?
Yeah, they'd have to be so much better than everybody else for me to acknowledge that. And if they were, I would. But I don't know. They haven't really done enough to tell me like, oh yeah, that's the squad that I'm going to trust.
You know, the crazy thing is you guys are only 2.5 back of the wild card.
Yeah, they're still not good at baseball. Like I don't know. I watched it. That's not a good baseball.
I know
team.
it's weird. They figure it out.
And they're super inconsistent. They'll win like 4 out of 5, and then they lose 6 out of 8. Like they're a bad baseball team. They're inconsistent. They're an inconsistent baseball team.
For whatever the reason, I made a Royals reference. It's either Friday or over the weekend. I don't know when it was, but I just was like, the Royals' ability to hang a crooked number just at some random part of a game.
Yeah, I think it was on Twitter.
Was incredible.
Yeah.
Getting shut out yesterday, going into the top of the ninth. 2-0 Tigers. Looking pretty good. Nope.
And then it wasn't.
3-run shot.
See you later.
Is that number crooked?
That is a crooked number.
It is a crooked number.
So basically anything except for 1 is crooked.
So it was just like, there they are.
Yeah, that's what they do.
And dab smack in the hunt for a wild card. Mitch Sherman was funny on Friday night. He was like, yeah, I think you really want to be a Dodgers fan. Or a Royals fan. I don't.
You're not a closet Royals fan?
No.
You sure?
I saw Jake Sorensen downtown, and he was rocking a Royals. I don't believe in grown-ups wearing jerseys. Somehow he pulls it off. It was pretty cool. I like the whole family thing, and he was with the fam.
Yeah.
Had Shorty sitting on his lap eating. I was like, that's a dad. That is a dad. And we were leaving. I was like, man, these Royals are getting on my nerves. But I don't have any root. Like,
did you go? Where'd you go eat?
Well, I didn't eat.
Oh.
I was with one Mr. Dante Lloyd. And he and the fam went to. I tried to talk him out of any popular place, but he went with Brewski's downtown. So we sat in there for about, I don't know, 35, 40 minutes. Killed some time. Yeah. Met a ex Twitter huge Nebraska fan sensation. Kind of hides behind the avatar. He doesn't use his real picture. He has a Herbie the Husker. But I met that guy.
Who's that?
I mean, he shall remain anonymous.
All right. I didn't know if we were.
But he gave me an acknowledgement leaving, and then it was the proverbial kind of point, talk, whisper when I was sitting down. I thought they wanted to say something, but they kept going, which is cool. And then when we got to the stadium, it's like, hey, I actually saw him at the very end. He's like, listen, I listen every day. I was like, you do? You just never know. It's a big account.
Is that the guy that walked by at the very end? Was I still sitting there? Because there was a guy that walked by that was go, hey, I listen to you guys every day.
No, that came down the stairs?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, different guy? Okay.
No. Those guys look cool, though.
It seemed nice, yeah.
They got some
the listeners.
They got some steps in.
They were getting up and down.
How about the folks that had to chase kiddos?
Yeah, I feel bad for them.
Man, I just would be, and I don't know. I think I would know because I've done it.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would be that cool. I think I would be the mean person that's like, that would tell like a 19-month-old, you know what you signed up for, even though he or
They
she really didn't.
absolutely did not know what they signed
And
up
I
for.
would be like, sit next to me.
Yeah,
But there were some folks that were getting some steps in.
they were getting some
There was
conditioning
this
in.
one little cutie pie. He had these big blue eyes. He had on like it was like almost like a Tommy Bahama, Nebraska button up.
Oh yeah.
Remember the little dude and his dad had on the 1890 hat?
Yep.
That little dude was so cute. He was busy. I'm like,
That dude was getting
he's going to have some huge calves.
that dude was getting more steps in than the team when they weren't hustling for Coach Rule.
Hey, right? I've seen him do that before. Sometimes he's done that with the coaches.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, the coaches are running with him.
I would be. I mean, just the coaches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. How'd you like to be a grown up?
Hey, he won't ask you to do anything that he's not willing to
Like,
do.
hey, man, this ain't working.
Let's go.
I don't like the fact that you're not holding folks accountable. Did you get a grasp? It's hard, right? Like I said,
There's a lot going on.
I was telling
There's a lot going
couple of the media folks that were going to write. You had to go there and focus on one or two specific things.
Yeah.
And it's even like if you cover 20 minutes of practice, it's still the same concept,
Mhm.
right? Because you have to go there with an idea of what you want.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot going on. It's a ton.
Yeah, there's way too much happening to possibly catch all of it.
Yeah.
So you kind of
That's why I don't talk.
Yeah, you kind of have to decide to zero in on whatever you're interested in.
Mhm.
And you can kind of like pick moments depending on what they're doing and be like, hey, I kind of want to watch, the linemen work over here, and then I want to watch quarterbacks and whatever. But you can only look at one thing at a time, and there's about 12 things going on at a time. I thought it was a cool experience. I'm glad they let people in to watch it. I do, I'd be hesitant to try and take too much away from it in terms of
Very. I'm with you.
like overarching things. It's because first of all, we're still 3.5 weeks away from a game. So we're like, third practice?
Yeah.
So pretty early on in the process, right? So I'd be pretty hesitant for that reason. And then secondly, most of us that either don't watch every day, which is everyone that's not on the team or on the coaching staff, or that don't have a huge familiarity with how high-level football practices work, don't only have a limited idea of what we're watching, right? Like you have to go in knowing that.
I would agree with that.
That's kind of why I think it's a little funny how protective coaches are of practice, because most people don't even know what they're watching, right? Like you can kind of pick some things and get some, like we were watching offensive line, defensive line drills, right? And you're like, oh man, that guy.
Me and you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that guy's got good get off, or this matchup between these two guys is really good, or
I'd say, look at his hand.
like Justin Evans and Ty Robinson were having some good battles or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So you can have
that's a good one.
little stuff like that, but you're not going to have general takeaways. I mean, you could be like, hey, Dylan looks better in more game-like situations than he does drills or whatever. Like you can take stuff like that if you want to.
Do you believe that?
Yes, I do.
That's an interest. So somebody else said almost the exact same thing.
Are you sure it wasn't me on Saturday?
I'm 1,000 because I talked to him as we were leaving.
Okay.
And I said, I'm not going to get up. I mean, he said the exact same thing.
I think when you put Dylan in game-like situations, you put him in like the drive to open practice, or because he put a couple of those balls in a bucket on that kind of opening team compete drive or whatever they were doing, right? And then you see him in drills, and you're like, yeah. And you brought something up that I think is probably accurate.
Yesterday or Friday?
On Saturday when we were watching.
Okay, what'd I say?
You said if your mechanics aren't pristine, then that could make sense, right? If you're like an improviser, if you're a guy that does a lot to kind of adjust on the fly, then the drills may not look as good as
I remember that.
Right?
Yeah, thank you for giving me some credit for being smart.
And I think
and a great artist.
And I think well, the first half's true. I think that's what we're seeing with Dylan.
Yeah.
Because you do see, and you heard it. You heard the coaches talking about, hey, you would hear Dylan. I think it was Glenn Thomas was mic'd up for a while, and he was talking about Dylan's feet.
He's an easy guy to like, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's not It's just like real quick
Yep.
adjustments. He's
Yeah.
not, giving these speeches and soliloquies. It's just like little like reminders, right, to tell guys what they need to be doing. But a lot of them were dealing with the feet, right? So if it's a drill where, hey, in order to get that ball precise every time, you're gonna have to have a little bit cleaner mechanics versus, hey, the pocket gets a little messy, or you're doing something on the run, or you have to improvise a little bit.
because he is an improv guy, right? Sometimes you'll see him like just change arm slots.
Yeah.
Or it will be
His
footwork.
natural feel for the quarterback position is really, really good.
It's incredible.
And
But you're right. Maybe I'm right or we're right. But I'm not sure you would like roll quarterback tape and say,
no,
hey, do it like this.
Right.
But
it works for him.
well, so here's the thing. And I get the, and I'm not making the comparison from statistical output, but stylistically, we do know who he models his game after. You'd say the same thing about Mahomes.
Yeah.
If you watched Mahomes, it's not like you'd say, hey,
that's textbook.
Do it like this.
Yeah, no.
But there's a lot of really, really good quarterbacks where I think you'd say that about Favre.
Oh, sure.
Although I don't put
Favre's not in that category, but
no. See, it's hard for me
not Mahomes for me, but
no, Mahomes is clearly gonna become
his own standard.
He and Brady.
Yeah.
Okay. So now Brady's probably a little more, hey, if I was going to teach it, I would do it like that.
Yeah.
So there's multiple ways to get there. But again, you see with
Rodgers gets a little goofy sometimes.
Yeah, that's his part of Rodgers' greatness is the art of the improv.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Same with
Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
Like you see guys
get goofy with arm slots and angles.
And I think you have to sometimes because it's not always clean. Now, where you could get into trouble potentially is
if you can't make the throws when it is clean.
Yeah, 3rd and 6, man. You just need to hit the little speed out, hit the speed out.
Yeah. Right.
Like 1, 2, 3, bang.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, bang. But I like, so that's kind of why I said that was the total coach in me. And I know sometimes when I say those kinds of things, people are like, oh man, you're just defending. I'm like, no, man, like, sometimes you just have to do what works.
Yeah.
The key is you just have to be able to do the consistent stuff when it matters.
Mm-hmm.
Who was the quarterback coming out and we were like, gosh, can he do things on? Oh, Caleb Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Can he do things on? See, that's going to be the thing for Caleb Williams, right?
I think it's a fair question.
Because sometimes you're just going to have to hit the little skinny or, the speed out or the hitch or whatever. It's just out.
There's some guys that you trust to improvise. There's some guys that you trust to be on schedule. If you've got a guy that can do both, then you've actually really got something there. Yeah. But I think it's a fair question with Caleb Williams. I think it's a fair question with Dylan is if he can consistently do.
So you're going. I felt like because there were a handful of people that, and maybe the two were sitting together. One's a really good football guy. I'm not so sure about the other. Not to say they were or weren't.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of the overarching theme with accuracy, and I'm just like, okay, I could see it. Like, I'm not going to shoot you down. I know what you saw.
Yeah.
But this is kind of why I think why, and this is where I think it has to go. Similar to when you, because I had no idea you were going to say that.
Yeah.
When we were talking, but I mean, there's a lot. Like, it's just like running backs, right? Like, if you see the crease, get in the crease.
Yeah.
But sometimes
you gotta get creative.
Just be patient.
Yeah.
Or, like sometimes you have to get off track. So it's the ability to. Now there's a couple positions you can't really improvise. Listen, if I'm, if my break is supposed to be at 13. Get it at 13. If my break is supposed to be at 12, if my head's supposed to be around, if it's 4/3 or whatever, like sometimes you're not afforded that luxury.
Or but really anywhere on defense because everybody else is trusting you to be in a certain spot for the most part.
Although there will be some times where you'll instinctively see a guy shoot a shot.
Sure.
You could see it a little bit of 9-on-7, where a second level guy can see a D lineman have his head inside. And he knows he maybe should have it outside.
Yeah.
Like maybe he's a C gap guy and a backer will get over the top because he'll see the opening.
Sure.
Like sometimes you can get away with feels like that.
Mhm.
More often than not, you do need, like, listen, if I'm a B gap guy, get in a B
Yeah.
gap. You know, so defense is a little cleaner like that. But I, especially with zone, man, like, you have to teach it.
Yeah.
And
You got to be where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, you got to do your job.
And I like, that's why I and Foreman and I were talking about this afterwards. That's why I'm a big no ball guy. Like, there's times in practice,
Mhm.
and it took the players a long time to get used to. Like, we won't even use a ball.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way you defend zone run game. Get your eyes out of the backfield and watch gaps move and stuff like that. So there's lots of little drills that I like that they do
Because
that don't look all
like
that
football.
that don't look all that functional, that I think actually work.
But there's a lot of, until you learn until it becomes like instinctual to be where you're supposed to be, the ball is just a distraction.
Yeah.
Right. We used to do that with basketball too.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Like, until you are like in a second nature to be where you're supposed to be, looking at the ball is just going to throw you off.
Mm.
Like, once you know where you're supposed to be, then you got to find the ball and make plays on the ball and whatever, right? But until that point, the ball is just dressing that it's going to get in your way.
Mm.
We'll have more on Nebraska football practice from Saturday. We've got Olympics. We've got Bud Crawford, another champion, still champion.
4 divisions.
Always champion.
I'm going to go back to something we said on Friday, too.
Omaha's own.
People thought I was being difficult.
We will get to that and much, much more coming up here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Coming up on the show today, we've got Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald at 8. And then at 9:45, we will talk to Jordan Moore. He's a broadcaster for USC. We'll preview the Trojans as we work our way from back to front of Nebraska's football schedule. We'll end with UTEP in game week. But before we get to any of that, I wanted to talk about our guy, Bud Crawford. Came in, got the thing done. You were on Friday a little less, I don't want to say less confident, but a little more cautious about Madrimov than I think most people were. You had some, I think, stylistic concerns. Is that fair?
I did. And there were a couple things. And I asked Kevin, I said, I'm getting some Bivol versus Canelo vibes here, where when Dimitri Bivol first, and now people know that Bivol's for real.
Really good fighter, yeah.
Even though he's not spectacular with what he does.
Yeah.
He's super fundamentally sound. He's strong, got a powerful jab. He works behind it. He doesn't come out of his shell a ton.
He's a hard guy to fight.
And Canelo found that out fighting a naturally bigger guy. And, he controlled Alvarez. And now, did I think Madrimov was good enough at this stage to do that? No. And I get it. Like, you look at their size and you're thinking, he's not that much bigger. But across the shoulders and strength-wise. And plus, what people have to understand, and I said this to a couple guys that asked me, and it was funny because I got like a slew of texts in a row. I told my buddy Florida Dave, he was looking for value in the fight. And I said, well, there really isn't any true value unless you take duration of the fight.
Like Crawford by decision. Because you got plus money.
Yeah, and I don't think I suggested that. I have to go back and look at our texts. I said, if there's going to be a stoppage, it's late, but this thing is going 10 plus. And I think it was maybe Amazing Daniel or somebody after that. I was like, it's going to be a tougher fight than people think. The only reason I thought that is for 2 reasons. Number one, Madrimov is, I think stylistically, even if you want to counterpunch and kind of figure him out, he's not going to give away rounds.
Yeah.
Because he's busy. So I'm like, that'll be interesting. And the other thing is, I think what people have to give Bud some credit for is he's figuring out his body. right? He's 35 years old. He's fighting bigger, a little bigger. Like the camp was different in terms of his weight. So he has to figure out what's going to be good for him going forward. So I'm not writing off premature for Canelo or whatever. Like I didn't fast forward to that. I just simply said, I would tell people it's kind of a lab experiment too for Bud and his body and how he wants to handle being bigger during camp.
Yeah.
So like I think that's part of it. Even at this stage in his career, this is the first time he's done this. And I think people will see. I'm pretty sure Madrimov is going to be a really, really good fighter. Yeah. Like I had some concerns with the style.
Yeah, because he's kind of, I don't know if funky is the right word, but he's got a strange style in terms of.
And I asked Kevin, I said, how does Bud get him to open up?
Yeah. And he didn't really. I mean, not a ton.
Not until he pressured him.
Yeah. He had to kind of go away from the counter.
But I don't know if that's how he's capable of fighting like that.
Yeah.
I mean, Bud can go hunting.
I don't know if that's generally, he usually doesn't go hunting until he knows he's hurt.
Yeah, until you're getting ready to go to sleep.
Yeah, until he has either.
So that part I didn't. I was very specific on why I asked those kinds of questions. Yeah. And I get it, because what Terence has shown is that he's so smart and that's basically what Kevin said. He's like, gosh, he's such a student of the game and watching tape. And I'm just like, yeah, but you need a willing participant too.
Yeah.
Like I can I can be in high school and I can want to date a good-looking girl, but she's got to like me.
Yeah. Well,
you may have to settle with what you can get or go be single.
Yeah, like there's a two-way street here.
Yeah.
And
like Madrimov has to go along with it.
And ultimately, I tweeted this out, and no big deal, but Al Bernstein agreed with me. So, the thing that kept Madrimov in the fight, which was not being a willing participant, also cost him the fight.
Yeah.
Right? Like he moved a lot, but it wasn't that aggressive. Like it wasn't aggressive enough, right? He didn't force the action enough to actually win the rounds. Now it looked pretty close because that caused Bud not to have opportunities.
That's why I like watching fights without volume. Now I almost never do it the first time around. I have to truly be put off.
Yeah.
Now Sean Porter had me close.
It was pretty bad.
But I try. I try not to come across as a hater.
Yeah.
I don't love him. I don't like him in that role. I just.
Yeah.
But
maybe better in like a studio situation.
Yeah. Maybe. Like let me analyze it after you see it, not like real time.
Yeah.
Because he still gets a little cheerleadery and like the skirt and pom-poms. And I don't need that. Right. Because people are easily swayed. I felt like it was happening in the Pitbull Cruz fight. With how that was going, I'm like, Cruz is not winning this fight. Like, don't get excited because people were wanting something to happen.
Yeah,
and they make noise or they get excited. Like, don't mistake activity for achievement.
Yeah,
Cruz is not winning this fight.
Yeah,
and it's like, so that's why I always go back and I turn it down. But Porter didn't do the broadcast any favor. Shoot, man.
I didn't think any of them did really. I
didn't like the broadcast.
I didn't think it was a good broadcast in general.
And this is coming from and I'm an Eminem guy. I didn't like the late start on the West Coast. I didn't like the delays.
It was midnight here before it started.
Yeah, I didn't like the delays. Yeah. I mean, I get the giveaways and stuff because when your promotion spends that much money,
they kind of get to do what they want.
Like you got to take. I mean, that card was fantastic. Yeah. So you got to take.
Well, yeah, you get. I mean,
but it's probably 1:20 before I turn the.
Well, and somebody
TV off.
Oh, at least, yeah.
I can't even remember.
I think it might be later than that. Yeah. But somebody messaged me and they're like, oh, all the stuff with the Saudis feels kind of gross or whatever. And I'm like, listen, Saudi money isn't free. Like they're doing this for a reason.
Yeah.
And they're going to get what they want out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it may not, they don't need more money. What they need is better publicity and things like that. So people associate them. That's what they call it, sports washing for a reason.
And you need a good media partner.
Yeah.
Which is the thing that they couldn't get with Liv.
Yeah. So like this is what you get. If you want the big paydays and you want the good cards and you want the money behind that, you may have to deal with some stuff that you don't feel great about.
You know, it's gross is Eddie Hearn.
Yes.
And he's good to me. Like it's not like we're on first name. I mean, he's taking care of me with like tickets and stuff.
Mhm.
But and I get it. You gotta champion your fighter, but man,
Yeah.
I'm just like, knock it off.
But I thought it was. So here's the question that I had leaving the fight, though, because I thought Bud pretty clearly controlled the fight. I never thought he was in danger. I thought the cards were going to be close because just of the nature of the fight. But
And remember, he's his own benchmark.
yes, right.
So
You're comparing it to Spence
We're expecting him to open this thing up
and finish him.
Yeah, but
right?
And it's like this is why I love his personality sometimes when it comes to the fight game. Like when he fights guys and it stylistically looks a certain way, it's always funny when those guys fight somebody else.
Yeah.
It used to drive him crazy. He's comfortable in his own skin now.
Yeah.
But it's like when he beats a guy like this, people say this, or when he does this
Yeah.
against a guy, people say,
But when somebody else is like, oh, way to grind out that win.
He gets the double standard too. He's his own benchmark of greatness.
Well, and the only thing that I kind of left with the question was, okay, is this an issue of Madrimov is just going to turn out to have a really incredible chin? Because I thought Bud hit him cleaner.
Yeah, he hit him with some good
than people realize, and he hit him with some combinations.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Did the power not translate to 154 the way we thought it might?
Yeah.
I don't know which one is true because we don't have enough on Madrimov yet.
The thing about it is Bud couldn't get to the body like he historically does.
Because usually he softens you up.
Yeah.
And then those headshots start to hit a little harder. Yeah. We'll wrap up hour number 1 coming up next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. And we've got some interesting national college football stories.
Yeah, we do. We do.
I know people want to hear me go off on the Colorado thing, but there's one that's it's in the like I know I understand that, and we'll get to it at some point.
Are you like, oh, shocker?
Yeah, I mean, like it's a total non-story to me. I was just like, okay, yeah, you mean this toxic culture is toxic? Oh my gosh, what breaking news! But the thing that I wanted to get to first, and if we've got time later, I'll go off on
how you do realize if they roll into Lincoln and win.
Oh, I'm gonna be.
You will be beside yourself,
furious,
because they do come across as highly dysfunctional.
Oh yeah, I mean, the guns and bullying in the locker room are not a great combo.
How about? Did I show you? Was that on or off air? Where we were talking, I was showing you Sapp's facial expressions.
Yeah.
When Deion was laying into his team.
Yeah.
And I was like, if that was a head coach, if I was a head coach, that would drive me crazy. Because
Rule would have had them running.
Well, he's not. So when coaches do that and they get at players, that's a reflection of the assistant coaches too.
Yes.
So you can't be like,
yeah, guys, get it in gear.
Yeah, what he said.
Yeah.
Like if Coach Lamanchi sounds off on a practice, you think he's not letting us have it? That's the first thing he's saying.
Because it's as much your guys' fault.
Yeah.
We're not teaching it right or not holding other people accountable.
How about transitioning? You hold your guys accountable. Can we do that, coaches? Like he would say that.
Yeah.
Like
he will get after the coaches first.
Yeah.
And then if he sees the coaches doing what they're supposed to be doing and the players aren't doing it, then you get after the players.
Yeah.
That's how it works. That's called leadership. It's not something I think Deion's real familiar with.
But I was just watching
the body language.
And I was like, and you were probably the wrong guy to ask, because I'm basically putting kerosene on your already smoldering deal. But I was like, are you watching how he's riding with what's being said as though he's absolved of any responsibility?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you get him, you tell him. I'm like, no, man, if that was me or anybody else.
But here's the thing though.
I was just gonna give you an example.
Go ahead.
So before. And I know you made fun of me for going out on the field, but I just was going to say hi, and then I was going to go be regular. So I did. It was quick. So I was talking to Coach White and Coach Dvorak real fast, and like there was genuine concern over, once they saw the people there, they were like trying to game plan what they should or shouldn't do. They're like, hey, you could have such and such in here. You could have such and such in here. so we're just trying to figure out, do we go vanilla? Do we shoot our shot? Do we, and I said, the cool thing about this is so new and fresh and impromptu. I actually looked at the fact that they didn't know 10 minutes before it was actually starting as, okay, there's nothing calculated or there were no assumptions made. In true typical fashion, they were going to adjust accordingly on the fly if they had to.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, there's some takeaway from that, because at the end of the day we need this practice to look a certain way because we have to have meetings too.
Yeah.
So I was just
it has to be a real practice.
So I was just like
it has to be a real practice.
And there's still that healthy acknowledgement. It's not even a healthy fear. There's still this healthy acknowledgement of coach is going to hold us responsible.
Yeah.
If he's going to give us the autonomy, that comes with a downside too. Right? The downside is you're going to be held accountable if it goes
like,
poo.
If you get it's what's the old saying is like, hey, they give me a lot of rope, and it's like, yeah, maybe just enough to hang yourself with, right? Like that's a real thing.
So I said, I walked away. I was like, I can vibe with that.
Yeah.
I can vibe with that. Because I'm thinking, hey, before soap scrimmages and live scrimmages, it's like we may revisit before we see what's out there in terms of who's watching. We may say 5 minutes before, hey, scratch that. Let's run all, let's run all over front.
Yeah.
Or whatever, right? So it's like I can appreciate the staying in the moment.
I also think they do a good job of. I think it's more. I don't know if it's more football applicable or what, but it's when you don't have everything pre-planned out. You have an idea of what you want to do. You do your work, but you're not so set in stone that guys can't adjust to things on the fly, right?
Yeah, games happen.
Right. Everything's not going to go the way you want it to go.
Yeah.
Right. Your script is not going to hold true in a football game. So being able and being willing to adjust based on situations, I think is a really good quality, not just in the staff, but that translates to the players as well. Yeah. I wasn't even trying to talk about Dion in this segment, but I was trying to talk about Sharon Moore, because I don't know that. Yeah, you and I both kind of had this takeaway that so Michigan got served with their notice of allegations over the Connor Stallion stuff yesterday, and it didn't seem like people were making that big of a deal about it
at first.
Yes. And it seems like Sharon Moore might be in a world of trouble.
Could be. And I don't even think that's wishful thinking. I
don't care. Like, I really don't. I don't have anything against Sharon Moore.
I mean, neither. Actually, my takeaway to me is I like this guy.
Yeah, like I had no
idea he was that big of a guy, but
I have no feelings one way or another to Sharon Moore. I don't have this hatred for Michigan even. If anything, they're sort of my college football Villanova, in the sense that I look at Creighton, I go, hey, the best version of that is Villanova. Let's go chase that. For Nebraska, what Michigan did last year, I think is the best version of what Coach Rule's trying to do.
I watched that CFP yesterday again. I watched them all in succession.
Yeah.
The fact that Michigan still beat Alabama lets me know how much better they really were, because they left a ton out there.
Yes, they did.
And they still found them. And I get it. They were chasing, they needed the game tying drive.
Mm-hmm.
And JJ took them there. But they were so good in so many areas. It was incredible.
So I don't have anything against Michigan. It's not like, Wisconsin or Iowa, or these other places I don't like very much. I don't have anything against Michigan. In fact, I sort of admire the way they've built their program.
Right.
And I think Coach Rule has too. He's used them as an example before. But Sharon Moore this is not his first problem. And that's going to be his problem, because he reached a settlement with the NCAA over COVID restriction violations. And whether that means he admitted fault or not, I don't know how that works with NCAA.
So that's what I was talking about with you. Like that, because that's going to be the thing, right? When sometimes you can do a settlement and
take a no fault.
And no fault,
yeah.
Right? It's this isn't an admission of guilt.
I think the way the NCAA views it is once you've received punishment, you're a repeat offender. So even if
that would be the interesting part.
Yeah, and that's how I was reading it, at least. And if that is true, he could be in real trouble here because
I agree.
You're talking about show cause penalties. You're talking about like suspensions. You're talking about probate. You're talking about real problems if you've got repeat offender status. And they're viewing Michigan the same way, like the university and the athletic department and the football team as a whole. So Michigan is in some real hot water here. It's not just sort of, again,
I think one of the articles I read, and it's not just because my sister used to work for the Detroit Free Press, but I think they used hot water in the title.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they said more. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I got to go back, but so that got my attention. Then I started seeing what some other national guys were saying. I'm like, this probably isn't going away. And are they built? Because I go back to Big Ten Media Days a year ago, and I told you Harbaugh was incredible.
Yes.
As in, when he left that podium,
That's one thing that
I was like, this dude is like Teflon Don. He was in. I'm telling you, I get vibes.
Yeah. That dude is unflappable.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
He almost was condescending in nature.
100%. It comes off that way.
In terms of dealing with it. And I just was like.
Externally, it certainly comes off as condescending or arrogant or however
this dude is straight Teflon Don.
Yeah.
I don't know about more because they may keep the heat up because I still think people are upset with Michigan like it was a slap on the wrist. But this was the most outward disdain I'd seen peers have in terms of other coaches in college football that were legitimately upset. Like
about the scandal.
Yeah, there's a difference between gamesmanship
and cheating. And they felt like Michigan cheated.
To a high degree.
Yeah, 100% felt like Michigan cheated.
I mean, so much so you could easily say that this was the primary catalyst for headsets.
Yeah.
For in-helmet communication.
It certainly, I mean, I think it was certainly a factor.
Well, you go back to Coach Rule's presser. For a guy that typically is pretty PC and you can't really bait.
Yeah, it doesn't really take shots.
I mean, they've been trying to get him to say something about Colorado for a year.
And Colorado apparently thinks he has,
but he even that press conference, he's like, look, man, like this is concerning.
Yeah, it is.
And I don't know why we just don't go to in-helmet communication, but this would be disappointing.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. What's I think going to be a big factor here is Michigan's changing a lot on the football side too. They're losing a lot of guys, so if they don't start off well, I feel like this thing could snowball on.
And maybe that's the catalyst. Maybe there's a reason they've upped the recruiting and their efforts.
Coming up next, we've got Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's TV. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're joined now by Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
Hey, guys. What's going on?
Sam, how we doing, buddy? Nice little Monday morning. I need the weather update. You guys are in a scorcher too, right?
Yeah, 100 degrees. Fun day. Last one, hopefully.
Supposed to cool off a little tomorrow?
Yeah, it does.
Hey, how about how when we think like 86 is catching a break?
Once it gets to 100, I get annoyed. I don't mind hot weather until then.
Yeah.
Then I'm annoyed. Yeah, that's about the time that I'm like, okay, time to be done.
We get to triple digits and Sam starts thinking about fall.
Yeah.
You know, we were thinking about fall on Saturday as we got out to the Nebraska Open practice. What did you think about just the number of people there, kind of how everything went, just your general takeaways about the experience in general since it was kind of a new deal?
Yeah, I think speaking of the heat, that probably kept a few people away. It was awfully hot, even though people were in the shade. But, I appreciated, hey, I'm in the media, so I didn't have to pay. So I appreciate that from Matt Rule, that we were able to watch it and share some of our thoughts with the readers and listeners. And I thought there were a lot of things that were interesting. It's football practice, so, you're not going to learn as much from one practice as you do from a game. But, I thought Nebraska, they got a lot of players, and they got a lot of interesting, maybe not first team, but second and third team battles. They got a ton of interesting scenarios there, and then the quarterback position is interesting too. because I think everybody kind of knows where the number one thing's going, but I think number two is wide open.
Okay, Sam, so let's start with the number one thing, all right? Because I'm kind of curious what your thoughts on Dylan Raiola were. I know we'd only really seen him in the spring game, and then this is the next most amount that we've seen him in terms of just in a Nebraska uniform. And we got to see him not only in some game situations, but in some quarterback drills as well. What were your thoughts?
Couple. So, I thought he did, a nice job of not making the really bad throw. And obviously they're emphasizing, eliminating bad turnovers. And I don't think he had one of those. He's got very quiet feet for much of his drop back, maybe a little too quiet. But, he stays in there and he's got some poise. He appears to be reading the defense. Making selections based on who's open and who isn't. He threw some really nice deep balls, for sure. Threw a really good one to, deep to Jamal Banks, which I thought was a really good pass during a 7-on-7 drill. So he's able to locate guys. I think he will continue to work on the mechanics piece of just stepping and throwing, coming over the top with the motion. There's some things that I think he can do because of his arm talent, especially with short passes that maybe he can get away with. But when you're trying to throw maybe, that 17, 18-yard corner route, that has to be thrown a certain way unless the guy's wide open. And so, just continuing to come over the top and step into the throws and, urgency, I think is an area. And my sense is once he gets in the games, especially when they're playing teams that aren't as good as the team he's on, he'll learn that urgency quickly. And Nebraska is going to play some teams this year whose defense is better than Nebraska's offense. That'll happen 5 or 6 times, and he'll have to adjust quickly.
Sam, I'm glad you brought up mechanics because I thought it was kind of interesting, and you could tell me if you agree with this or if I'm out here in left field, but it seemed like his accuracy was better in game situations than in the drills. Do you think that's a result of the mechanics, or how did you see the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dylan's an accurate passer. I do. I think there's the game situations. You mean like the team periods? Yeah, I think he made some good throws in the team periods. What again I would say is he has all of the mechanical tools. I think it's just the word I would use is urgency. Like every rep being the same and being the Drew Brees elite, so to speak. Brees probably had about as good mechanics as anybody. Brady did too. Just doing that, making that the standard and the habit. And so, I think in some of the drills, again, he can throw the ball so effortlessly that it looks pretty good coming out of his hand. But passes outside the numbers on the field, if listeners are able to kind of visualize the football field, those are hard throws, and he's getting better. I mean, for sure, he's got a lot on tape, and the thing that I think the most about him is he just doesn't seem very panicky. He seems very, very calm and in control. And, when he goes from station to station, place to place, there's a confidence about him. And there's a camaraderie around him. So there's things he does where he's well beyond his years as a quarterback. I think the other piece is just every single rep being, great.
Yeah, I think the funny thing about, and typically when you have higher achieving people potentially, whether it's in school or in athletics or even in the private sector, you have to allow for what's made them, what's gotten them to that point. Mm-hmm. And for him, I think it's his feel. He has a tremendous feel for the game. When to slide, when to step up, when to kind of flush himself. But not only that, he feels the temperament of what's going on around him too. So, like if something, it seems like he's the type of guy, like if something needs a kick in the butt, he'll give it a kick in the butt. If something needs to throttle down and chill, he can throttle down and chill. I would imagine for the staff, like they're kind of learning those too, because you don't want to turn a guy over to himself and say, oh, hey, do your thing, because you still want to coach in the moment. But you do have to probably have a little bit of grace for kind of his skill set too, like most people that are potential high achievers.
Absolutely. I think you put it perfectly. There's a gradient. There's a grade you're going up, and there's a learning curve piece, and there's also and this, again, let's just say for argument's sake,
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska wins their first 7 games. It's possible. I don't think they will, but let's just say they do. And they go into, the 8th game of the year is Ohio State. I think it's at that moment where, and let's say they'd won 5 of their first 7 by, 7 or less points. Then they just won a bunch of one-score games. They're due to win them. Let's say they do. Everybody around here will want to build a statue to Matt Rule. But Rule will remind everybody, hey, we're just winning the games that we lost last year.
Yeah,
then you go into
that does sound like you.
You go into the 8th game, and everybody knows that game's nothing like the first 7. It's the horseshoe. It's your 7-0. You have Ohio State's attention. This isn't Ohio State sleeping on you. That's when, you go to this quarterback who's probably had a good season so far if you're 7-0 and go, okay, this week isn't you and I. You're not getting away with things this week. This week, it has to be, you've got to tighten everything up. As the team got better, in theory, let's say they started 3-0, then 4-0, they would have been ratcheting that up anyway, and by the time he gets to Ohio State, what you hope is, okay, this guy's now in position to go win that football game and win it without Ohio State turning it over 5 times. This is that Ohio State. This is, Ohio State in 2016, Nebraska was 7-1 or whatever, and Ohio State beat Nebraska 62-3. And that's what's like, Ohio State cared that night, and all of a sudden you saw what they did. I think that's part of what you would see, is that a ratcheting up of, okay, now we're up to this level. Now you're playing Iowa. You don't really think you can do what you did against Northern Iowa, against Iowa, can you? Because no one has. So those kind of conversations will come as they go. But right now, you do have to have grace. You have to be like, hey, you're going to have to do some things, and we expect you to learn. But by the end of that season, what you hope is that learning curve is kind of been reached, and all the things are being done the way that you want them done. Because, again, the goal around here isn't just to win 8 games for the next 4 seasons and everybody pat themselves on the back. I guarantee you the media would be fine with that, because that's kind of where the media is right now. Like, just win some games so we can go to a bowl game and hang out somewhere for a week. But the program wants to win big. And in order to do that, Raiola is going to have to be elite, not just talented, but all the things. And I think Nebraska knows that, and I think he knows that. So we'll see where it goes.
Sam, when you so this is a little bit different than like the first 25 or 30 minutes or whatever, and there's a lot going on. It's relatively condensed. In a normal practice, some can be inside, some can be outside. When you're watching and evaluating, did you go in wanting to look at a handful of things, a particular thing? How did you negotiate drinking through a fire hose versus being specific? Because it's hard to watch in that setting and have any overarching takeaways unless you were trying to maybe go super micro.
Right. So I wanted to watch everything that the quarterbacks did and watch it closely.
Okay.
I think that's important to watch Raiola, and I think that's what our readers want. They want to know, how are the quarterbacks looking? What's this Jalen Granstad guy like? That kind of thing. And then
probably better than most think. I'll let you get to that later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think I've said, I don't know if I've said it on this show, I think he's going to be the second stringer. I don't think you bring him onto the program unless you intend for that. I don't know why you bring him there to be 4th string. But we'll see. If he's the second stringer, then Heinrich Haarberg can do things for you that, you wouldn't normally have your second stringer doing. We'll see. He's the Andrew Bunch, so to speak, of the roster. Anyway, the quarterbacks, and then what I watch for, and it's not easy when they're not in full pads, but you still watch for it, is just the attacking leading edge of the defense. How are they attacking the day? How are they, attacking the offense when guys are covering? Are they smothering? Are they being aggressive to the point where they might draw a flag, which is what I would want to see? I don't want to see too cute. I want to see over aggressive and then rein you back. And I think Nebraska is that. I think they're aggressive to the point where you need to pull back on the reins. And I think that's where Nebraska's defense was last year. And it's where Nebraska's defense hasn't been enough of. And I think they're back to that point, and I think that's good news. I was watching for the kicking a little bit. And then, I'm watching to see who gets open at receiver, because they've talked a whole bunch about how great they're going to be there. And there were some guys getting open, and Jalen really didn't practice. So, those are probably the four or five things I'm looking at. Wasn't looking that much at the offensive line, although I noted that Turner Corcoran was with the first unit instead of Teddy Prohaska. And I noted that Micah Mazuka's, he's a good player when he could play in the Big Ten. So he's a good player. And apparently he's improved his work habits. But multiple players last week said he's the best. He's the best guy, the guy they don't want to go against. So why would they lie? They're not lying. He's a good player.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, it's funny that you brought up kicking. Is kicking maybe second only to quarterbacks, where you're like, hey, until I see it in a game, I don't care what it looks like at all?
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I think you care if it's not good.
Yes, but you can't really take anything from me. Like, well, yeah, he's making kicks in practice.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I think the punting may be just as large a question. So, I now the two positions, I think the punter is more important at the collegiate level. There are a handful of kickers. Michigan had one a couple of years ago. Nebraska had one for a while that can win you games, and like there's always those moments where, okay, to win the playoff game, 47-yard field goal. The reality is almost every single guy on a football team can make a 47-yard field goal, and some of that's up to the wins of the moment. But what you really want is Torrey Taylor. You want a punter who's so good that he changes. He basically puts the opponent 85 yards from a touchdown again and again and again. And Nebraska hasn't really had that player since Brett Maher. Sam Foltz. I'm sorry, the late Sam Foltz. And they need that again. They need somebody who can flip a field. And so punting, I think, is really important at the collegiate level because it could change games. And I think Nebraska's got to continue to work on getting a game changer at that position.
Sam, with kind of as we're breaking down this schedule, I'm still, and I don't listen. This isn't coach speak. It's just kind of how I've been conditioned from a player too. We said, oh, okay, let's just suppose they go 7-0. I'm not sure I could get to the point where I think Nebraska is going to be for sure 2-0. How do you how do you navigate, like the whole no fear of failure, but understanding currently that it is really one game at a time for this program without it being coach speak?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a coach, you're obviously in your mind modeling out various scenarios. Like, you have to imagine the possibility of winning every single game. Like, it has to be like you obviously are going to focus on the micro moment and look at the specific, but there's also things that, as in your mindset happen if that thing begins to build. And so, like, you imagine beating Colorado, and all right, like, we beat Colorado Saturday night. We got to come back the next week, Saturday morning. How do I prepare the team to not waste a game opportunity just because the name of the opponent is Northern Iowa? Like, you think about all those things, I'm sure, ahead of time. But yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that the first game, which is UTEP, enormously important, and have to put together a performance that falls into the Colorado game. UTEP and Colorado are going to do some similar things on offense, different quarterbacks, of course. So, of course. I mean, it comes down to the second game of the year is enormously important. Everybody knows that. Beating Colorado was probably very important for the program's psyche. There are guys, in that Nebraska's program that have lost twice to them. There are guys that know that they've lost 3 times in a row to Colorado. So, this is important for the program's psyche. It's going to be a huge crowd. People are going to be very disappointed if they lose. And so, yeah, of course, that second game looms very large. The first game looms very large. But, part of, I don't know if it's the freedom of the sports writer, but part of my job is to imagine various kinds of scenarios or think about the kinds of things that, maybe not the head coach would think about, but the athletic department would think about. Imagine those kinds of scenarios. Or what a GM would think about in the NFL. That's just part of what we do is. So you also think about, what would it look like to add this player to the team or get this transfer? And the coach might say, well, it's a lot more complex than that. Well, yes, it is. It is more complex. But, that's part of what we. So we try to straddle the line between, whatever you call it, the lowest common denominator and the highest level of complexity. Sometimes you got to live in both worlds. And so, yeah, I mean, I think Nebraska understands that, the first game, so even before the second game, is enormously important to building the kind of program and team they want to have this year. They should go out and play against UTEP, and they should win the game by a margin, not 24 to 20. They should win that game by a margin because they have better football players and they're playing up to their level of capability. If they do that, then they'll beat UTEP by a margin. They won't beat them by 4.
Sam, I want to return to something you said earlier, before I got you sidetracked on all that Dylan Raiola talk. You mentioned you thought the battle for that second or third string spot at quarterback was going to be really interesting, and I'm curious what you meant by that.
Well, so I think one of the things that you chew on is Heinrich Haarberg is, according to Matt Rule, a build-a player from Madden. And he's 6'5", and he's 220 or whatever he's weighing, 225, 222, 217, whatever. And this is a guy that can help you win football games, but oftentimes your backup quarterback doesn't do a lot. Mm-hmm. They're there to be healthy and to go into the game when the starting quarterback gets hurt or isn't playing very well. Well, with Haarberg, it's more interesting because that's a guy that maybe you can put him on the football field in either a wildcat situation down by the goal line or as a tight end or something like that. And if you're going to put him in that place, then you're putting him in harm's way. You're risking the possibility of him getting banged up. So then you have to have another quarterback who, what his job is to be healthy and to run onto the field if the second quarterback gets banged up and the first quarterback gets banged up. That to me is probably Jalen Gramstad. Now certainly it can be Danny Kalin. He did some nice things in the practice. He also missed a throw that would have been a touchdown on a wheel route to Dante Dowdell. And then even though the interception didn't count because of a penalty, he threw an interception. Kai Bayer stepped right in front of the pass. Now, Kalin, to me, he's got a lot of good tools. I really like a lot of what he does, and he does have an intentionality about his reps. But I think you can also redshirt him. I don't know that he needs to play right away. And you roll the dice with whether Danny's going to stay forever or not. But you can't – I don't know that you burn his red shirt while you're burning Dylan's red shirt just to say you did it. So I figure he's a redshirted guy. And Gramstad is not here just to pat people on the shoulder pads and say, hey, thanks for letting me be here. I think he's probably there to shore up and be a backup quarterback if they need one. And I thought he looked pretty good on Saturday. And Haarberg, he did some good things too, but he still looked like Haarberg. He can run. He can make some really nice throws. His mechanics are better. He also had, he also made a few mistakes. So, I think that's where it's at. Is Gramstead, can he come on a field and run an offense? You're darn right he can. And everybody kind of knows that. And so now whether he'll be 3 or 2, or I don't really know how they're going to list it on a depth chart. But I would really be intrigued to see Heinrich Haarberg on the field doing something for Nebraska other than, sitting over there signaling in the place.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate the time as always. We will talk to you again next week.
Take care.
Thanks, Sam.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. A reminder, get over to hurrdatsports.com to order your copy of the Hale Varsity Football Yearbook for 2024. You've got between now and August 11th. That's less than a week to order that. Those will ship after the pre-order window closes. Hurrdatsports.com is where you need to go. We've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We're here at the Pillar Exterior Stage. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla, and we are halfway through the show this morning. Some interesting stuff there from Sam.
Yeah.
Yeah, you asked him a question, and I was, I'm going to give you some props here. I thought it was a really good question about, in reference to Dylan. How much do you kind of have to let a guy cook with what got him here, right? Mm-hmm. That's sort of the million-dollar question with a guy that's a little unorthodox in his style, whether it's a Mahomes, whether it's a Raiola, whether it's
Stafford,
Caleb Williams, whether it's Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, whoever we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Johnny Manziel is a great example. That's a dude not in college, obviously, but I think that's the professional version of Johnny Manziel is what people are afraid of with the Dylan Raiola, right? Where the improv type, obviously it worked in college, right? But
wait, we're not fast forwarding to the pros yet.
No, I'm not. I'm saying
because I think Caleb Williams.
Yes, but I'm saying if it looks like in college what it looked like for Manziel in the pros, that's what people are afraid of with a guy that's unorthodox. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Where it's like, hey, it just doesn't translate, or it's too inconsistent, or whatever, right?
The equivalent is him going from high school to college.
Yes.
Okay. Because he's still in college.
Right. That's what I mean.
So you mean high school to Dylan coming from high school to college?
Yes. People are afraid it's going to look like when Manziel went from college to pros.
Gotcha.
That's the equivalency I'm making. Okay. Where I'm not jumping to the NFL for Dylan.
Okay.
But it's a fair question. Be like, okay, well, this is what got him here. This is what made him a 5-star. Like, this is what made him, recruited by Georgia and Ohio State and everybody else. So at what point are you trying not to like, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it situation versus if we're able to clean things up a little bit, then it can be even better? Yeah. Like, that's a really hard question.
It is. And I think that's why you hire guys like Coach Thomas.
Who's been doing this a long time.
Yeah, because I think he's seen such a variety of quarterbacks. You know what to try to bridle and what not.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think a big part of DR is you got to kind of let him be him. But your program isn't one in which there's still a level of accountability that you have to your position coach and the coaches in general. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be like, oh, hey, we're not coaching you.
No.
But it's, hey, this works for you. Let's see how we can work around it. That's coaching in general. Right, so I think that's why with him, you know what they talk about all the time. How many times did you hear? Did you listen to Coach Thomas during when he had the open mic?
Yeah.
What was the thing that he talked about almost excessively
with Dylan?
And quarterbacks in general.
Thing I heard the most was feet,
footwork.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
I think that's all they care about.
Sure.
Right, because. One thing I do know for sure is I don't worry about his command of the game.
No.
Or his football IQ or anything like that.
His feel is unreal. Like, his feel for football is.
So I think you have to kind of let that ride.
Yeah.
And I think you work on – I think it is primarily mechanics. I don't think you change –
No.
Even in the spring game, I was like, oh, gosh, he kind of flushed himself.
Mm-hmm.
But it also allowed for him – to do what he wanted to do within the pocket.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to be willing to negotiate.
You have to be cool with that.
Yeah.
So as long as he can make the on-schedule stuff, you kind of let him work the other stuff.
Yeah, I think you let him cook.
So here's my question about the feel of for the game, right? And I don't know.
Listen, you have to be able to. Yeah, folks have to be mature enough to be able to get the gist of the point. Because I'm not comparing their statistical output yet, but it's a little bit of what you had to do. And I heard Jones talk about this, Oklahoma State's coach at the time, with Barry Sanders. One of the things that slowed down, and not only was Thurman great, but one of the things that they wondered with Barry at the time is, he improvises too much. Makes it hard on our offensive line.
Thurman was going to do exactly what he's supposed to do.
He makes it hard on our offensive line.
Yeah.
So, but it's not like you're going to say, what'd Wayne Font say? They put him into one back. And it's like, well, we're going to have some negative plays, or Saquon Barkley, or some of these guys that, like, because people don't realize at Penn State, Saquon Barkley wasn't always a positive yard guy.
Yeah, did a little dancey dance.
And so, but you're not going to say, hey, Saquon, don't be Saquon. Hey, Barry, don't be Barry. Same as I don't think he'll say, Dylan, don't be Dylan, because we kind of make it seem like he's out there making up stuff, and I don't think he is.
No, I don't either.
It just doesn't look pure like a pocket passer.
Yeah, it doesn't look traditional.
But you know what else I think it is? Go back and look at some of his teams in high school. They weren't always the greatest up front.
I think you had to learn some of that to survive.
So, like, some of that, he's still way young in the maturation process, even though he's polished in some other areas. So I'm not overly, like, again, all I care about, and I'm going to keep saying this, and I get he's a 5-star and this, that, and the other. 3rd and 6, it needs to come out on time.
Can he play catch?
Play catch. 3rd and 6, and you need to improvise. God dang it, improvise your brains out. So but
again, that's like the autonomy with the coaches, right?
Throw and catch the ball.
Yeah, it's like the autonomy with the coaches.
They could not do that a year ago.
If you're going to give him the autonomy to be Dylan Raiola, you kind of have to understand that, and he has to understand as much as, hey, as much leeway as this gives me, there's certain times where I just have to make the throw.
Yeah.
Right? And so I wonder if that feel for the game.
You see the smash concept they kept banging with, you get the little curl in the corner? Like, those are – and I know I kind of get what Sam was saying in terms of, sometimes those would be floated out there. But you saw in the spring game, and I get it, it wasn't always good on good. But the corner route that he threw to Barney, was it Barney? Who caught the one in the corner in the north end zone? Or in the south end zone?
In the spring game or Saturday?
I think it was Barney. Whoever it was.
I think it was Barney.
Whomever it was, that thing was out on time, the only place his guy could get it. As long as those two-man concept routes and stuff like that, that's fine. Like, do what you do.
We saw another very similar throw in practice on Saturday to Banks in the corner of the end zone, where it was out on time and where the only place where his guy could get it.
Your comment on Banks was funny. You're like, yeah, Banks is –
no, I said Nair.
No, listen, I'm going to get to what you said.
All right, my bad.
Yeah, Banks is cool and all. I like Nair.
Nair's really
He's
good.
really good.
Nair's really good.
So that's what – so in the spring, that's what I was saying. I get it. Big body, mature.
They're going to need Banks,
strong hands.
Yeah.
He's a good spokesperson. The Sunday upside guy, though, is Nair.
Yeah.
So I was in agreement with.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
And that's not taking anything away from Banks.
Well, it's hard not to want to know where he is because he yields results.
He does. I think he's going to be super productive for Nebraska this year.
And but
Nair's upside's enormous.
You know what else I like about JB? All his practice reps matter.
Yeah. He does seem like he goes really hard.
He competes. His practice reps matter.
Which I think is why he's become the spokesperson, right?
Well, I think people, until you graduate from not doing something just to get by and doing it to get better, like that's when you, like, don't just do the next rep to check it off the list. Do the next rep to be as good or better than the previous one.
Yeah.
Because that's how you build excellence. Because then it becomes muscle memory. Then your body understands, and you can understand what it's like when you know you're not meeting your own expectations. It's just easier to self-guide that way.
Well, and it's easier to maintain that standard through fatigue if that's what your body's used to doing.
100%.
Right? Like that's why those matter. Because like when you're fresh, it's really easy to like focus and lock in and be like, all right, let's do it right. When you're tired, and we saw this over the last handful of years, things start to break down because the muscle memory is not there to be your safety net.
Yeah. Hey, this
right?
doesn't feel right. I know there's more in the tank.
Right.
It's like Coach Samuel used to always tell the guys, hey, man, what's your 70% like? You're not going to feel great every day.
Yeah.
Are you maximizing with what you have?
Everybody can be good at their A+.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Listen.
How many people are good at their B-?
Well, I hear it all the time. Nobody feels as good as they did on day one.
And no one ever will.
Like now you're managing your levels, and then as you ramp up to kind of plateau a little bit from your body, and then get it ready for game one.
Coming up next, I've got one more question for you about Dylan and what we saw in practice. And, there's some other things we got to talk about today as well. Maybe we'll get to a little bit Deion. Maybe we won't. I don't know. I'm not surprised by it. Maybe somebody else is. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. Fun stuff. Am I still okay? There we go. We good?
Yeah.
All right. DB, I have one more quarterback question, then I promise I'll leave you alone.
Okay.
So with the feel we talk about with Dylan, is that something in your mind that can extend to when he has to have the mechanics sound and when he can be a little looser? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like when all of a sudden does he have to dial in?
Like let's say it is 3rd and 6 and he's got to throw that timing route.
So I don't. I mean, that's a good question, but I don't think. So if to ask that question, we're operating under the assumption that he chooses to when and when not to use good mechanics, and I don't think that's the thing.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I understand.
Yeah.
But he's not making a conscious effort to not dial in. I think he always would like to be dialed in. It's just sometimes you have to deal with the fact he's going to improvise a little.
So could I frame it in a way, and that's a fair point. Could I frame it in a way that it's not so much him making a conscious decision to not be dialed in with mechanics versus there are certain situations where he feels it's more advantageous to do things a little off schedule.
If they're throwing a smoke and he wants to throw that thing sidearm just because that's his quickest way to get it out, he may do that.
Right.
If he's got to hit a slant or they threw 2 look-ins to the slot, in 1v1s, that thing's coming out the best way he knows how. So, but I think that's almost any quarterback, right? It's like. Sometimes you'll watch QBs throw, and it's like, oh, I wonder why he threw it like that. So for him, I think it's all the quarterbacks. But for him in particular, because he has the most natural arm talent, it's reminding himself that, hey, I know I could probably
get away with it.
But let's just go back to my fundamentals.
But I shouldn't.
I think, and that's okay, right? It's like sometimes you'll see, and I hate to keep using the Mahomes reference because the production is nowhere near. But again, the emulation of the game is like you'll see Mahomes do some things seemingly unnecessarily sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Like you could just do it like this. You chose to do it like this.
Yeah.
And even in those moments, I don't know if he's making a conscious effort.
Or if it's just instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you don't want to do is coach instinct out of guys.
Right.
Right. But you have to be able to live with the results too.
Sure.
So that's
it's not always going to work out.
Right.
So this is a weird analogy. It sort of reminds me, you know how obviously you're a big baseball guy. You know how they used to tell you and it's less so now, but it was like, hey, we don't care what your batting stance looks like. As long as you get to this point
and this point,
this point, then you're good. You can do the Kevin Youkilis, you could do the Gary Sheffield or whatever. We don't care what happens as long as
guys with their feet in the box. Moving,
you can do the Jeff Bagwell. You can do whatever, right? As long as by this point, by the time the pitcher's right here, you're ready right here, right? Like are we talking about sort of the same neighborhood of ideas there?
Yeah. I think it's about weight transfer, and arms and where my elbow is. But sometimes guys are good enough and talented enough where arm slots aren't as important. But I do think weight transfer is. Like, you just don't want to get in the habit of throwing off your back foot.
Right.
So because
eventually that's going to bite you.
You want to step and throw. So I think it's primarily about weight transfer.
So there's certain things where you're like, hey, this doesn't matter so much. We'll let it go on arm angle. We'll let it go on arm slot. But we really need you to make sure you're weight transferring your weight forward so you're not throwing off your back foot.
I think that's the big deal.
Fair enough. We've got out of breath Brian on the line.
Hard to have good weight transfer without good footwork.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
What's up, Brian?
What's up, Laker Cowboy fan?
Don't forget a Yankee fan too.
Hey,
don't forget. That's going back to the day of Reggie Jackson.
Yeah, nobody. Kyle, are you mad at me for hating Reggie Jackson?
No, I don't get mad at you. I understand you will make mistakes sometimes. It's all right.
Well, they did get you. They did get you another walk-off yesterday. Boy, you like some powerhouses.
I told you I like flagship teams, and it's weird how I like them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting you brought up Ja'Cory Barney. That's who caught my eye during the spring game in the slot. Kind of. I had visions of a poor man's Deebo Samuel in my head when I saw him in the spring game. But it wasn't him who scored the first touchdown. I forgot
who caught the corner route. I can't even remember.
I can't remember. I know him and somebody else both had the number 16, and I can't remember who the other 16 was.
Oh, you know what? It was Bonner.
It was Bonner.
Okay, yeah. No. It was Barney. Bonner is the one that I like, rather. Bonner is the one that I like. Corey is the one that scored.
I'll say Bonner has a little bit more of that Debo build, right?
Yeah,
the bigger, strong.
Barney's a little more slight.
Yep.
He's a slight guy.
Correct.
Bonner's kind of got that thick with
thank you for correcting me.
Correct. Like Bonner could be a tight end, a wide receiver, a full, an H-back. Like, Bonner's got some versatility to his game.
Thank you for correcting me. That's the one. Bonner is the one that I like. I knew I got it mixed up. Both of them had 16, but Bonner is the one I like. And I think the words that I would use to sum up when you guys are talking about Dylan Raiola and maybe getting off of mechanics during the play if he needs to, I would sum it up like this. You can do that just as long as you are somewhere near, like I said, Patrick Mahomes, and not near closer to Brett Favre.
So Justin Fields is who you don't want. Mahomes is who you do want.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I don't want Brett Favre. I don't want Brett Favre.
Because he threw to the other team too much.
A lot of interceptions.
Yeah, a lot of interceptions with that off-kilter stuff, too many gambles, and I'll leave it at that. Yep. I'm not gonna say no more about Brett Favre. But that's
let me get you out of here on this.
Learn my lesson.
Let me get you out on this, B. Would you pay Dak Prescott now?
I wouldn't pay about 6 quarterbacks that are getting paid, but it's the NFL. You need one, so be smart. Yeah, I would pay him. What other choice do you have?
my man.
You know what other choice you have? Don't pay him.
I appreciate
That's
it.
That's the option.
Wow. All right, Ravi, whatever.
Thanks, B. I think you could pay your quarterback. You could pay him without having to give him the going rate. That's what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah. Or you can pay somebody else that's not $60 million a year. Like if you're going to pay somebody $60 million a year, if you're going to pay, and listen, I know the number is inflated, but if you're going to pay somebody a certain percentage of the cap, he better be able to elevate the players that you cannot pay now, right? You better be able to elevate the guys you have to replace with rookie contract guys. Mm-hmm. He better be able to elevate guys. He better be able to do the Peyton Manning thing where he can make your defense look better by always having the ball and always having control of things, right? Like if you're going to pay a guy that number or that percentage, he's got to be that guy.
Like you need him to elevate
everybody else,
Jaden Reeds and the Dobbs of the world.
Yes, because
that's love.
Because if he doesn't, then you're in real trouble because you're paying a guy and you can't afford to pay the other dudes, right? That's why, again, the guys that have won Super Bowls are either elite guys or guys that were on a rookie deal or not getting paid.
Shane, do you like this wide receiving core sans their number one, who I will not name? They are Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, and Terry McBride.
Nah.
Do you want me to give you the number one?
Yes.
He hasn't played an NFL snap in a regular season game.
Okay.
That would be Marvin Harrison Jr. So if Kyler Murray could have a good season and elevate those guys,
then he's much closer to being worth the money.
Okay.
That's how it has to work in my mind.
That's why I like giving those examples.
Yeah.
Because
providing the context, right?
Yeah.
Because, and again, this is the extreme example, right? But nobody wanted Mahomes' receivers last year, including Kansas City.
Well, remember all the whining that people
were drops doing. And all that, and it was fair. They were bad, right? But Mahomes was able to elevate those guys and kind of get them to grow along the way during the season. They were better in the Super Bowl than they were in Week 4.
Shane, if a guy could elevate Quentin Johnson, Darius Davis, DJ Chark, I won't give you the 1 and 2s because you'll know them, even though neither one of them have played a snap in the NFL.
That's Justin Herbert?
That is Justin Herbert. That is without Ladd McConkey and Josh Palmer.
Yeah. He's going to have to be that guy. He is. Because rookies count in that because they don't have...
So what? I'm just giving context to the things that we're saying when we just roll out. Hey, man, they got to be able to elevate their guys.
Yeah, this is what I mean.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to get Joe Burrow doesn't have this problem, right? Joe Burrow doesn't really have to elevate. He just has to get those guys the ball and be healthy enough to do it.
At least right now.
We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. And we're brought to you by the Team Jack Foundation. Make sure you get to teamjackfoundation.org to get involved with helping them find better treatments for childhood brain cancer and one day a cure. You can volunteer. You can donate right there on the page. You can find their events, and you can just learn more about what they're doing and what projects they're involved with. Everything you need to know at teamjackfoundation.org. So we find ourselves revisiting the NFL quarterback conversation we've been having throughout the shows the last week or so.
Well, it seems like it's longer than that.
I think it started last week, though, right?
Yeah, where we got nitty gritty.
Yeah,
like where you kind of hard-lined.
Paying guys.
I'm not paying a guy.
Well, it's because it was right after Jordan Love got paid. It was right after, Tua got paid. It was right after Trevor Lawrence got paid. And frankly, I wouldn't pay any of those guys.
So you could easily make the case Lawrence is the one that screwed up the market.
Probably.
For this batch of
and deserved it the least out of those guys.
Because of the guaranteed monies, too.
He deserved it the least out of those two guys.
But the only guy that seems to have caught as much flack. See, Lawrence didn't catch any flack, yet when it was Hawk Tua, everybody lost their mind.
I didn't think Lawrence should have got paid either. I didn't. But I don't know if I don't know if people just knew he shouldn't have got paid and so it didn't get talked about, or if they are misinformed that he should have got paid that. Because he really shouldn't have.
Prescott's got to be the most polarizing. Because I can't get anybody nationally to say, "Yep, I would have paid Tua."
Yeah.
Lawrence flew under the radar because it was Jacksonville.
Yeah, nobody cares.
I think the hardest one so far has been Dak. Even Love didn't get a ton of national pushback.
I do think Love's really difficult because of the sample size.
No, I'm just giving you but I'm not giving you the. I'm just saying,
You're giving me the perception, not the reality.
Yeah, I'm not saying I didn't hear people say, "Well, don't pay Love." I mean, even our most ardent Packer fan, who, by the way, I love how he didn't pass up the chance out at Lawson Gardens to remind us again. Padilla has got to be the closetest, quietest, good trash talker I've maybe ever been around.
Oh yeah,
because he's not overbearing.
No.
he is consistent and steady.
Yeah, and he'll hold on to it until he gets a shot off.
Yeah.
But which is fine. And like, listen, I get that Jordan Love was really good the last 8 games, like really, really good for the last 8 games of the season.
I told you 18-1.
It's 8 games.
No, I understand.
That's my problem.
But my point in saying this is,
but Dak is
he didn't get the pushback.
No,
it's lock that guy up. He's good with LaFleur, and all right, I get the small sample size. There was some acknowledgement with Dak. It is so I got Brett. He's a huge Cowboys fan.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, listen, I'm a Cowboy fan. I'm not paying Dak.
Yeah,
Bo is like, I'll pay him. Even the national talking heads with like Marcus Spears, hey, don't pay him.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Schwartz tweeted out the stats between Dak and Mahomes and was like, hey, this is pretty good.
It is pretty good.
So nobody's been as polarizing as Dak.
Here's the distinction I would make with guys, right? Because the numbers are going to look a certain way versus, and you can always, but you watch it and it's different with certain guys. The distinction I would make, we're talking about guys that elevate, right? They elevate their teams. They elevate their receivers. They elevate the defense in really extreme circumstances. The next level down of guys are guys that just execute. To me, it's an execution versus elevation conversation, right? Is you're a guy that can execute the offense with good situations around him, or is he a guy that elevates your entire team? Because I would make the argument that Dak is a very high-level executor, but not an elevator.
So, but you have to have a starting. This has been my argument the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you don't have to pay guys, because I don't think you do either.
Not everybody.
But you realize why people do, because if you don't have a competent starting quarterback, you have no chance.
Yeah.
So I didn't love your stance of it being get to the Super Bowl or bust.
So that was the one thing that if people are just acknowledging that it's okay to just make the playoffs and give yourself a shot there,
you need a good quarterback.
Then I'm fine with that.
You need a good quarterback.
But you also need to understand the history, not you, the general you, that in general, that's not going to work to win a Super Bowl.
Okay. So how about this?
But if you're okay with if you're like, hey, we have to be competitive, and then we can see what happens, I'm okay with you saying that out loud. That's fine.
All right. I won't give you their number one. Okay. Because I feel like we're having this chicken or the egg argument. We're talking about elevating non-stars yet, like Dobbs and Reed.
Sure.
Right? Because do people talk about Dobbs and Reed in the same vein as they talk about Love? They always start with the quarterbacks, right?
Most of the time, yes.
CeeDee Lamb can't even get that benefit.
Like I would say,
and CeeDee Lamb is a monster.
Well, I would just use San Francisco as an example where people talk about Debo and Ayuk and Kittle before they talk about Purdy. So that would be an example where the weapons get mentioned first. With 49ers, the weapons always get mentioned first.
All right, here we go. Trey Tucker, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers. Should a quarterback be able to elevate those guys?
Be able to, I would like them to be able to, yes.
You want the number one?
Yes.
Devontae Adams.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay. You want to be Gardner Minshew?
I wouldn't want Gardner Minshew, but I would take his situation. Sure.
So you need a competent quarterback.
Yeah, I understand. If you want to make the playoffs, yes.
Okay. I'll give you another one just because
you need a guy that can execute.
Okay. All right. Would you like Darius Slayton, Daniel Bellinger, Jalen Hyatt, Allen Robinson? I will not give you their number one. Should a quarterback be able to elevate those guys? They're pretty good.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know who their number one is?
Who?
Malik Neighbors.
Yes, we don't know yet.
Would you like to pay Daniel Jones? Because you did.
I would not like to pay Daniel Jones.
I feel like I feel like there's a little double talk here.
Why would I want to pay Daniel Jones?
So, but if you have a competent quarterback, you're just saying it's not Jones.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would pay someone in that situation. I don't think Daniel Jones is that guy.
This is a beautiful one.
Okay.
And I don't even know if I can give you enough guys because you're gonna know.
Okay.
This just lets you know how good And you may not realize where this guy went. So I'll start with him.
Okay.
Because he's a little maligned.
Okay.
Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, David Njoku. Would you like to know who their number one is?
Yep.
Amari Cooper.
Yep.
Would you like to have paid Deshaun Watson? You told me this guy cannot get to a Super Bowl.
When they paid him, it made more sense. Like, so Deshaun Watson's one of the most difficult guys in the league.
He belongs in there with Dak but at least Dak has been productive because he's been healthy.
Yeah, because he's been playing, right?
So Deshaun Watson's basically missed 2.5 years.
Yes, and what? Yeah,
one was forced.
Yeah, one was suspension. Yeah. But so that's why Deshaun Watson's one of the most difficult guys in the league, right? Because
but you hate on Deshaun Watson like almost no other.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of his, and that's as much for
even though when he was playing,
but that's a long time ago now. Okay. I mean, when last time that's why I said when they paid him, it kind of made sense. If you want to take away the off-field allegations and whatever, it made sense for Cleveland to pay him at the time because of his most recent season with Houston. Coming off of his last Houston season, I probably would have said he could make a Super Bowl. I probably would have said that they should have got paid. But that's been a little while now.
Okay.
I mean, that's why, again, Deshaun Watson's one of the most difficult guys.
I want you to know, like, while we're having this conversation, you have to admit as a general manager.
Mm-hmm. It's a really hard job. Okay. I get that.
Okay. So let me give you another one.
Yeah.
This one is fair. I'm going to leave out their top two.
Okay.
You're going to get it right away, though. Paris Campbell.
Okay.
Let's go with Aeneas Smith and Dallas Goedert.
Okay. Who are their top two?
A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
You wouldn't pay Jalen Hurts? You told me that guy couldn't get to a Super Bowl.
I said he couldn't win a Super Bowl. There's a difference. A lot of dudes just get to a Super Bowl.
Oh, my God.
No, I'm just saying.
They don't.
Look at the history of guys that have lost Super Bowls.
No, they don't.
Look at the history of guys that have lost Super Bowls. There's a lot of just dudes in there.
Oh, my God.
Do you want to look at the list?
Anytime. You going with what, Rex Grossman?
There's way more outliers on the guys that have lost Super Bowls than of guys that have won Super Bowls.
So not Bryant Johnsons, not Trent Dilfers, not Eli Manning. We will go back and forth over Eli Manning. But no?
You go last.
Well, you're stuck.
Years.
You're stuck on Stan Humphries and Rex Grossman.
I'm talking about the last 30 years. There's more outliers that have lost Super Bowls than outliers that have won them.
This dude just said. So I'm gonna give you a chance to take that back. A lot of just dudes get to Super Bowls. Do you want to pull that back?
Not a lot of just dudes. There are more outliers that make it to a Super Bowl and lose than that win a Super Bowl.
Are you sticking to the fact that Jalen Hurts can't get Philadelphia back to a Super Bowl?
I'm sticking with he can't win a Super Bowl.
That is based on absolutely nothing.
It's based on the fact that I don't think he's an elite guy and he got paid. That's what it's based on.
So when they got to the Super Bowl, it's
because he was on a rookie deal and they could afford everybody else.
So I can't go back.
They've started having to let these defensive linemen walk. They've started to having to let some of these guys go because of salary cap issues. But their defensive line was incredible when they made the Super Bowl.
So should a guy
now Hargraves?
So should a guy have been able to elevate Marquise Brown or Rashad Bateman?
You would like to. I don't know. I don't know what those guys are. You would like to think that they've got enough talent that you can elevate
Lamar
those
Jackson,
guys.
in your mind, should have been better than we're giving him credit for.
He was that good in the regular season. Lamar Jackson's a total weirdo because of the difference.
You've given me 3 of those guys that you think are particularly difficult.
Yeah. I have.
Okay.
Lamar Jackson is a guy that based on
an Isaiah Likely who had to fill in for Andrews. We know what Andrews is like when he's playing. And Nelson Aguilar, Rashad Bateman, and now Zay Flowers.
That's a receiving core. I would like to think that Lamar Jackson can elevate. Yeah.
Is there a one in that bunch?
Probably not.
Not yet.
Yeah, not that we've seen. Mark Andrews is probably the closest.
Is Lamar Jackson better than we think?
I think in the regular season he's just as good as we think. He's a weirdo because he's a totally different person in the playoffs.
How much help do you think he needs from that wide receiving core? when you get to light competition, because we're talking about getting bounced by the Chiefs. We're not talking about losing. We're not talking about losing to like the Steelers.
I know. It's a I would like to think the way that Lamar Jackson plays in the regular season that he'd be able to get past every once in a while. But again, the AFC of it all, the Kansas City Chiefs of it all, make it really hard to judge his playoff success. But it hasn't. Part of it's the way it's looked.
Okay. Would you pay
Lamar?
Would you pay a quarterback to go elevate these guys? And I will not give you their number one.
Okay.
Juwan Johnson, a guy you know a lot about, Cedric Wilson Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
Rashad Shaheed, and I won't give you their number one. Would you like their number one?
Yeah.
Chris Olave.
Again, yes, I would pay a guy to elevate it if it's the right guy. That's kind of the distinguishing thing we're getting into here. Like same thing with the Giants.
How much?
I would have paid.
So the point in the exercise is how much would you pay a guy if your standard is going to be the elevator guy?
My standard is who the guy is, not who their situation is. Like,
but how are you a general manager without understanding what your situation is?
Okay, I understand that, but your situation depends on who your quarterback is too. Like whoever your incumbent quarterback is, that's what I'm deciding on who I pay or not. Like if I have to decide between paying Dak Prescott $60 million or going out on the open market and being like, okay, I can go get Sam Darnold for like 15,
10.
Yeah, 10. Like, but let's say he has a good year in Minnesota and he costs a little more.
Hey, Shane,
would you rather pay Sam Darnold, let's say 3 years, $20 million each, or go pay Dak Prescott $60 a year for 4?
On paper, this is just, I use him because after you know who this is, you'll have an answer one way or the other, definitively. Okay, you ready? I'm going to give you this guy's stats. Career 65 completion percentage.
Okay.
Career.
Okay.
All right. He averages 7.2 per pass attempt. He's thrown for almost 40,000 yards.
Okay.
242 for touchdowns, 107 for interceptions. His rating, career, 92.3. His RTG for his career is 92.3. Would you pay that guy based on those statistics as your quarterback?
Honestly, I need to see what it looks like.
Okay.
But on the statistics, I wouldn't have a huge problem paying that guy.
Do you know who that guy is?
Who?
Shane, do you know who that guy is?
I mean, I'm going to say like Rich Gannon. I don't know.
That guy is Derek Carr.
Or Derek Carr. About the same thing.
Yeah. That's why, like
that guy is Derek Carr.
No, I know, but what did
so you emphatically would not pay him
100%. But that's why I said I need to see it, because we've had this example with Dak and some of the numbers that we're comparing with Mahomes, right? Like, yeah, the numbers can look favorable, but it looks different when you're watching it. It just does. So the numbers can get you so far, but I feel like people are getting paid off of numbers and not what it looks like. And the numbers matter. Don't get me wrong.
They sure do, because I know one thing that matters. When a guy is 2-1 and his team is, and he's playing quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and they got a great defense, then it's a problem. And that guy's Brad Johnson. So, I like
Brad Johnson a little bit, but
you get the point, though.
No, I do.
Right?
I 100% get the point.
We didn't like Jalen Hurts' numbers, and they were incredible, and it looked great.
Jalen Hurts' numbers look great. He was also on a rookie deal. I like the rookie deal.
So does everybody.
I know, but that's the point. Is if you're just like, hey, we have to be competitive.
What I'm telling you is, unless you have a good quarterback, you don't have a chance. And it's hard to be in the locker room and be like, hey, like, what are you telling the Raiders right now? Hey, get the best out of Gardner Minshew. Hey, concede because you play in the same division as the Chiefs.
Aiden O'Connell guy.
Well, maybe.
No, I get what you're saying, but that's sort of the whole point. Is if you're okay with just like sometimes we have to pay a guy because we want to be competitive.
Okay,
and we want to have a good locker room and we want to give people hope. That's cool.
So
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so ideally,
sure,
You want to be the Steelers then?
Where you don't have to pay a quarterback and still be competitive?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh my gosh. No, you want the chance to win. You want the upside.
Okay, but what I'm saying is some of these guys are fooling themselves.
It's not fun.
They're-
It's not fun to be a Steelers
They're
fan.
fooling themselves into thinking
It's
these
cool.
guys have the
I
upside.
enjoy it. I love them.
It's not fun.
But I have to be super myopic. I have to say to myself, okay, let's be realistic. Can I get 22-8 from Russ? Give me 800 from Justin. I know he's going to complete 54% of his, that's what I have to do.
Yeah. But if you get the right guy in that situation, like you did with Big Ben.
Do you think the Steelers think that they can't win their division?
The division this year, probably they can win it.
Yeah. You know how casually you just said that about arguably the best division in football?
I don't think Cleveland's very good. I don't think Deshaun's good enough. I don't think Deshaun's good enough.
saying that about a team that won 12 games a year.
I don't think Deshaun's good enough.
Okay.
Now, if somebody else ends up playing quarterback with them, then all bets are off. And I don't know about Burrow. I love Burrow, but if he can't stay healthy, then that Cincinnati team, and even with him, you're the one that believes wholeheartedly that they're taking a step back this year. And I don't have a lot of argument against it. Like they've had some transition since they made the Super Bowl a couple years ago.
I mean, in the regular season, the Browns were 11-6 last year.
I would pay a guy to
and they got all that guaranteed money tied up to a guy that wasn't playing.
Yeah, and they're not going to win a Super Bowl like that.
I would pay a guy to elevate. Even if it's just 1 year, just elevate, I would do that.
Yeah, you want to pay the guy that elevates. That's my
even
point,
if it's just
is
1
you pay
year.
the guy that elevates. But you can't convince yourself that a guy that executes is a guy that elevates. That's the point. And they're convincing. I don't want to play. I wouldn't pay Brock Purdy.
Let me ask you something. Why wouldn't you pay Tua?
Why wouldn't you pay Tua?
Yeah.
If you don't think he can get you to a Super Bowl. That's why you wouldn't pay him. If you're like, hey, we want to make the playoffs every year and we'll just see what happens. We hope Mahomes gets hurt 1 year.
Let me ask you something.
Then that's fine.
Okay. So which is easier for you to get your mind around?
Okay.
I'm a high level teacher.
Okay.
But I'm going to suppress my ability to teach because I'm going to concede that Mahomes is in my conference, or I'm going to get these guys over the hump because I'm a high level teacher. Which one do you think is more natural?
I think for coaches, I'm going to get this guy over the hump.
Okay. That's why guys get paid.
Right. Because most coaches think they can fix everybody. And that's not always true. That's the point. Well,
games actually happen, though, where things play out.
Yeah, I'm aware. I watch them.
Okay.
I see it.
Right.
I see it. That's why I'm like, I don't think Tua can win a Super Bowl, because I see it. That's what I see, is I don't see Tua winning a Super Bowl. Even if Mahomes gets hurt or Kansas City has an off year or whatever, I don't go and, Tua's the next guy up. That's not what I see. You can make a better case for like a Herbert if you're talking about going AFC in the same division as the Chiefs, but I don't look at Tua as a guy like, he's next man up. You can make the argument for Josh Allen if he reverts back to a couple years ago where he's not throwing as many interceptions. He could be the next guy up. If Joe Burrow can stay healthy, I don't know about that roster anymore.
So for you, is the difference between Love and Purdy the fact that he's throwing to Jaden Reed and Dobbs, and you have CMC and Kittle?
I don't know what the difference is between Love and Purdy because I've only seen 8 games of Love executing at a high level.
I know, but you've seen way more from Purdy, and you're less.
I think I feel about the same with those guys. I wouldn't pay Purdy because I think he's executing at a high level with really good talent around him. Now, if let's say they lose Ayuk, and let's say Debo gets banged up again because Debo gets banged up every year, and then they're going with lesser guys and they're still producing at the same level, then you have to start having that conversation about Purdy. But right now, he's an executor, not an elevator.
So and this was said out loud between LaFleur and Love. Hey, what was the difference? The last 8 versus the first 9?
Is they gave him more of the playbook.
And LaFleur said, "Listen, I said here.
He took the reins off.
Here's the playbook. Take the reins off."
Yeah.
What if Shanahan did that? You don't trust Are you saying you don't trust Purdy? Because that playbook is pretty sweet.
I'm saying that I have no idea if Purdy's capable of doing what he's been doing without elite weapons.
So you don't think there's any degree of complexity that
I think
of our mastery that Purdy has shown with Shanahan?
I think
who's one of the greatest offensive minds that we've seen in the last 20
Purdy
years?
has an incredible mastery of that offense. I have no idea if it still works without elite weapons. For him, I don't.
Okay, that's fair.
Because
I think
he's always had elite weapons in that offense. That's the thing that everybody talks about with San Francisco is look how great their weapons are. And they're right. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo got that team to a Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan and some of those weapons. And you want to talk about just a guy that lose Super Bowls.
Wow. So can I land the plane for you?
If you'd like to, sure.
Coaching matters.
Sure, yeah, it does.
So why can't coaches think that they can get guys over the hump?
As long as they're not fooling themselves. That's the problem.
How are you supposed to know when you get to that stage? Oh, I'm fooling myself. I'm telling you how alphas think.
Okay, that's fine. But alphas think, and they're wrong on a lot of these things.
So Shanahan can win with Garoppolo, but my crazy man in Miami can't win with Hawk Tua? Yes, he can.
They didn't pay Garoppolo like they're trying to pay Tua. That's the difference.
Wow.
We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR in Lincoln. We're live on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage, reminding you to get out to UnionOmaha.com to get tickets. They're next in town in a couple weeks here. They've got an exhibition against Bellevue University at Werner Park. In the meantime, you can shop, you can get info, whatever you need to learn about Union Omaha over at UnionOmaha.com.
He wasn't always good, by the way.
In the meantime, pay your quarterback what you can afford to give yourself a chance to win.
He did drop the ball a lot.
Who?
Cooper.
I know. Oh, believe me, I know. I don't even give me. What are you talking about? That can't be your.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. If we're okay with saying, hey, let's just make the playoffs and figure and hope for the best, that's fine. You can pay the Derek Carrs.
What else do you think teams do in the season? What do you think the goal is? Not to get to the playoffs?
No, I think the goal is to win the Super Bowl.
So you think they think, let's just get to the playoffs and then not have a chance to win it?
Do you think
that's what they think?
Do you think there's more than a handful of teams? Do you think everybody starts the season, or half the teams start the season with hey, we can realistically win the Super Bowl?
I think 12 to 15 teams legitimately think that they can win a Super Bowl.
Are all 12 or 15 of those teams right?
What difference does it make?
Because that's how I would make my financial decisions, is whether or not that's realistic or not. Because I think the number should be smaller than that. On any given year, I don't think 15 teams go to a Super Bowl.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Because expectations of your franchise matter when you're talking about who you're paying and who you're not. So if your expectation is we have to go win a Super Bowl, and then you're paying a guy that realistically probably cannot win you a Super Bowl with the way your roster is constructed, then you're making a mistake financially. But if you're hey, our owner wants to make the playoffs every year.
So if I'm Jim Harbaugh,
okay,
and I'm with the Chargers,
yep.
Do I want my ownership group and my general manager thinking we can't get to the Super Bowl? Do you think they can get to the Super Bowl?
I think they probably can. That's why they hired Jim Harbaugh.
Yep, me too.
Right.
So
but I also think they probably think they got one of those guys at quarterback.
But he's not on a rookie deal.
I understand that. They've got one of those guys. Either you're an elite guy that gets paid, or you're a non-elite guy.
At no point have you and I said, yep, I believe in Herbert, pay him, he's an elite guy.
I said they believe they've got that guy.
And I'm telling you, that's all that matters.
Okay, but sometimes those teams are wrong. That's my point.
So I mean, that's sports.
A lot. That's fine. But that's when I go, hey, why are we paying some of these guys? There's going to be a lot of people that are wrong about these enormous quarterback deals.
Can Dallas as a franchise make as much money as they do just because they're Dallas if they're not winning 12 games? Because I know they were bad for a stretch.
But they've been competitive for most of it.
Okay.
They haven't won.
So should Dallas weigh the competitive market, or should they be viewing, we're going to try to win the whole thing?
If Jerry Jones's goal is like, hey, I just want to keep printing money, then play the competitive market. Keep being competitive enough to keep printing money.
Okay. Because I think sometimes we think that like we just go out and we can get a franchise quarterback.
No, they're really hard to get.
Okay. So, but in the meantime, you got to be able to function at a high level, ideally, right?
Right. My point is, can you function at a high level without having to pay a guy $60 million?
Okay.
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Because I think there's guys out there, right? Are there guys out? I think that there's guys out there that you can go get that can have you function and be functional and be competitive without having to bust your salary cap. And long term, if you're working with those types of guys, it'll give you an opportunity to bring in better talent around them.
I just don't understand like it's tough because you can't just throw your hands up in the air. You're telling yourself is all these other things can go right around us. So maybe we can get a Stan Humphries or a Kerry Collins or a Chris Chandler or somebody,
Jake Delhomme or Colin Kaepernick or Jimmy Garoppolo or whoever.
right, that can get us in that game.
Right.
That's how I think you so even though.
But what did all those guys have in common? They were on really good rosters and they weren't getting paid like this compared to the percentage of the salary cap.
The market is the market for a starting quarterback. I'm not sure you can work around that. We can argue whether you're going to pay a guy, but if you're not paying them, somebody else will. So that's what you really have to decide. Now, the only guy that I could see out there that maybe wouldn't have the market that the other aforementioned would, like if Dak Prescott were to hit the open market, somebody's going to pay him.
Sure.
If Hawk Tua hits the open market, I'm not so sure he has as many high-end suitors.
Probably not.
So, I mean, but for the most part, the guys that we're talking about, like there's going to be a market for them, and a big market.
Yeah, you don't have to play in that market if you don't want to. Like here's my entire point. And then we can drop it and you can say I'm wrong and that's fine. My entire point is if you're dealing with a guy that isn't a high-level elite guy, one of the handful of guys that I believe can win a Super Bowl, you are better off going down the list because I think the difference between, let's say this is not the real number. Let's say there's 5 guys that can win a Super Bowl just for ease. I think the difference between number 6, who's still getting paid like the top 5, and the difference between, say, 16 is smaller than the difference between 5 and 6. So I would rather go get 16, pay him like 16, than have 6 and pay him like 5. Because then you can improve the rest of your roster to give yourself a chance to be in a position where a Rex Grossman or a Kerry Collins or a Chris Chandler or a Jimmy Garoppolo can get you to that game. That would be my philosophy as a GM.
I think you would be thinking a lot different if this wasn't Mahomes, because the teams that have lost to Mahomes had better rosters. I feel comfortable saying that top to bottom.
Yeah, for the most part, I think so. I would include the 49ers. I think the 49ers, top to bottom, had a better roster both times they lost to Mahomes.
Yeah, so did the Eagles.
And they didn't have Patrick Mahomes.
So
right?
it's like.
But that's even without Mahomes there in that situation. There's always a hierarchy, right, where you got top 3-4 guys. Like Mahomes is in his own category, right? And then you have the guys below him. Even take Mahomes out of that, right? Let's just move him off to the side for a second. If you're talking about the other 3, 4, 5 guys there, I would still rather pay 16 money rather than pay the 6th guy top 3 money.
Yeah. Wow.
And then improve the roster around them. That would be my philosophy as a GM. I think that gives you a better chance than to overpay.
I'm simply just telling you, as long as guys like Nick Foles can win a Super Bowl, coaches and front offices will pay.
Okay, but Nick Foles wasn't getting paid. That's
you
my
don't
point.
You don't understand the point. Foles was good enough without having the huge numbers. So if you get a guy that's close, you'll tell yourself, I'll pay the going rate, because those guys from a talent standpoint are better than Nick Foles. The quarterback market was not what it was then for Nick Foles, even though it was just a few years ago. So if you get a better talent, coaches are saying to themselves, I'm a good coach. We're going to pay this guy. I can do the rest.
And my point is, if you pay guys that are in the Nick Foles territory or even a little bit better, you're not going to have a roster good enough to do what the Eagles did with Nick Foles.
Okay.
That's my point, is I'd bet on the rest of the roster if I don't have one of the dudes. That's it. That's the whole point. Speaking of teams in college, at least that had one of the dudes. USC had Caleb Williams last couple of years. They're going to be trying to figure it out, see if they've got enough talent on the roster to do it with one of the guys that maybe isn't a dude anymore either. We're going to talk to our guy Jordan Moore coming up next about USC. Wrapping up the show here on a Monday on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, KFOR Lincoln. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Jordan Moore. He's the sideline reporter for USC football. Jordan, how are you this morning?
Wrapping up the show, man. We're just getting our day started out here on the West Coast. This is an adjustment period between the time zones.
That coming from a former sideline guy, man, I'm always so appreciative, because I think it's the toughest job of the three. I know the play-by-play guys will give me grief, and now that I'm the analyst, I give myself grief. But man, you guys got to be good, because you need a reason to break away and still be creative, man. So I'm. My heart, I got a soft spot for sideline guys. Plus, we get to hear more than normal people, right? It's like, let's go.
Yeah, well, I mean, the sideline life's going to get interesting here. I'm used to dealing with the heat in Arizona. I'm going to have to invest in a pretty good winter coat, I think, here.
Yeah, so I actually think that's a legit point, man. And I know some people, the whole Feinbaum Coach Rule thing got out of control just because that's what talking heads do. But I do think there's definitely something to the degree of difficulty in the conference, not just from a time zone standpoint, but, 1 week you may play in 71-degree weather, and the next you may play in 38-degree weather. And there is the time zone thing. How does that add to the complexity, in your opinion, of how to deal with the depth of this conference?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a huge deal for USC in year one.
Yeah, schedule does work out.
Yeah, I think they just sort of, I don't know if they did it on purpose, but they took it easy on USC a little bit. When you see Michigan at Minnesota, but it should be beautiful fall weather, I would imagine, early on in the season. Then the late games are at Maryland and at Washington, and Washington's a familiar opponent. Not necessarily warm up in Seattle late in the season, but probably not snowing. And then, Maryland should be fine. So I don't think it's a huge thing, but I do think the styles of the conference will be a major storyline going forward, because instead of, just everyone, playing that sort of, ground and pound style that we've seen Iowa succeed with, and a lot of the teams, really Michigan taking it to the next level, but it's kind of like adding more Ohio States. Now we'll see if everyone's as talented as Ohio State, but when you add USC and Oregon and what Washington did last year, that's what you're adding. You're adding elite speed on the outside, elite quarterback play, That's the question is, sort of who's going to overcome who in those stylistic matchups. And the talk out west is, hey, we got to get better in the trenches. We're going to lose these games if we don't get better in the trenches because of the physicality of the teams that are typical of the Big Ten.
Yeah, Jordan, Ravi and I were both in Indy, and we felt like after day 2 that Lincoln Riley was by far, I thought, the most interesting, because I wouldn't call him surly, because I know a lot of you guys that see him all the time felt like, man, this is actually pretty good for Lincoln. But I felt like it wasn't in defense of, but he did want to remind people that SC is SC. How much of that kind of that brashness and his confidence do you think will resonate as the day in, day out grind kind of happens for this football team?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a fascinating season both for him and his career and sort of where he is in this USC project. I mean, the way he's talked about it sometimes is it's almost like the years got flipped. He went 7-5 last year, but if that had been his first year, coming off of a really poor season in Helton, the season Helton was fired mid-season. If he'd come in and gone 7-5, and then his second season at USC goes 11-1, and Caleb wins the Heisman Trophy, then everyone would just say Lincoln's doing the Lincoln thing, and here comes USC. The Trojans will be preseason top 5 and all that. But instead, it went the opposite way. Way, way, way better than anyone expected in the first year, and then last year, ultimately disappointing after a good start. So, I think a lot of it's up in the air, and so he's come into it, not willing to concede that last year was indicative of anything to come. That he's much happier to back his track record of his 5 years at Oklahoma and his first year at USC, and not 1 year or really a second half of the season last year that didn't go his way. So he certainly believes in the power of USC, and I think he believes in his own track record and abilities to turn this thing right back around.
What do you think his biggest takeaways, right? As a guy that has fancied himself as a lifelong learner, what were you think some of his big takeaways were from the Alex Grinch experience and defense? Because he talked a lot about them being better on that side of the ball, upping their level of physicality. What do you think were some of the primary takeaways, especially coming from a guy that made a very good run at Tony White, Nebraska's first defensive coordinator?
Yeah, I think that the takeaways are, coaching the whole football team, and especially going into this league, and that there's got to find other ways to win other than outscoring everybody. I think that there's always belief that his teams will score points. Even losing a talent as great as Caleb Williams, he's lost talented quarterbacks before, and he's built others and continued to score points. But I do think that there's a belief that there's got to be some other ways to win football games, and sort of went outside of the family a little bit and hired people that he didn't know. I think looking for something different, because I do think within that Air Raid family, within that Leach family, it's sort of like the defensive style is, hey, let's try to match the offense. And I remember interviewing Alex Grinch early on, and he would say things like, if we score 40, we just need to hold the team to 39 or less. And I don't think that sort of defensive coordinators, all defensive coordinators think that way. I think a lot of defensive coordinators think we're going to hold them to 0 and we won't lose games. So I think that's sort of the change in mindset of bringing in a whole new defensive staff. Not just one person, not just somebody that he has a relationship with, but bringing in a whole new philosophy. And seeing how that plays out and marries with the way that he coaches offense and the way that he coaches the whole football team.
We're talking to Jordan Moore, sideline reporter for USC football. Jordan, you mentioned the loss of previous great quarterbacks under Lincoln Riley. It does feel a little different with Caleb Williams because of how prolific he was. It seems like there's got to be some step back, at least in year one, with Miller Moss here. Do you think the defense can improve enough to make up for that little bit of drop off in quarterback so that they can improve on last year's record? Or how do you view that dynamic where it does feel like the loss of Caleb Williams is a little different than some of the previous quarterback losses with Riley?
Yeah, it's the question of the season for sure. It's hard to know because I thought Dan Lynn was a really good hire, but it's still a new person in the room at USC. He did it. If he could do at USC exactly what he did at UCLA, then absolutely, because USC was 100 plus in all the defensive rankings last year, and Dan Lynn's UCLA team was up in the top 20 in all the rankings. So yeah, if you can create a top 25 defense in a year and make that kind of turnaround, I think that is going to make a huge difference. And sure, if you're scoring 5 less points a game or whatever it is, going from Caleb Williams to Miller Moss, but I think it's less about the quarterback position and more about the change in offense. I just think that the way that they're going to run offense with Miller Moss is going to be very different than the way they ran it with Caleb. Caleb was so improvisational. He held the ball for a very long time. He used his feet a ton. The offense that we got to see a preview of in the Holiday Bowl was prolific, but prolific in a different way, much more so like Lincoln's first offense as head coach when he had Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma. Once he got to that mobile quarterback with Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts, not to say guys like Baker and Miller aren't mobile, but they're not running a ton the way that Caleb was. So, to me, it's a little bit more about timing, getting the ball out. And so I do think that there's things that they will do better offensively, even if maybe the quarterback statistics will be difficult to match.
You brought up Lynn earlier, and he's got to probably keep it simple in week one. How careful do we have to be about any sweeping indictments like normally get out of hand with week one matchups, especially a helmet game like LSU and USC?
Yeah, it's a tough schedule overall for USC, and it's a very difficult start to the season. You're talking about neutral LSU, home Utah State, at Michigan. I think most likely that USC will be underdogs in 2 of the first 3 games. So that is a difficult place to start. Now, if you win one or both of those 2 games that you're underdogs, then all of a sudden, everyone's going to blow you up and say that you've fixed everything. And if you were to lose both, people are going to say it's over and it's the end of the world. So that's a little bit of just college football. It's kind of a small sample size sport with 12 regular season games, but that is the nature of it. They know going in, and the LSU one's just interesting because you have both teams losing Heisman Trophy quarterbacks, both teams that were really poor defensively last year.
Yeah,
and their offseason focus was on fixing that. Both programs with head coaches that are accomplished, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. So it is a little bit, I think, like looking in the mirror in that first game, and so it'll be interesting to see who's farther ahead.
That's Jordan Moore, sideline reporter for USC football. Jordan, thanks so much for your time. We'll catch up again soon.
Thanks, Jordan.
No problem. Have a great morning.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio tomorrow.